The Republicans have figured something out, that the more free we are, more people are allowed to vote, the more people of color that are allowed to vote. They can't win elections anymore. The only way they can win now is prevention or lying. That's it. The country is moving away from them. There's no game. There's no answer other than let's not play fair.
Even as the White House embarks on a serious effort to codify voting rights in Congress, state Republicans are remaining hard at work rewriting voting laws to that very point. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has this warning for all Americans.
What the Republicans are doing across the country is really a legislative continuation of what they did on January 6th, which is to undermine our democracy, to undermine the integrity of our elections, to undermine the voting power, which is the essence of a democracy. So we have to do that bill. There is no more important bill.
We welcome back to the program this evening Michael Steele, former chairman of the Republican National Committee, former lieutenant governor of Maryland, and the host of the Michael Steele podcast, also Matthew Dowd, former George W. Bush strategist and founder of Country Over Party. Michael, here's what's scary. Donnie is right. What Republicans are doing is unjust and it's un-American. But here's the problem. They're doing it and it's working. What can Democrats do about this right now?
Well, they've got to get serious about the threat that's in front of them. They have to be able to articulate exactly what it is and understand where it's coming from and why it's so animated. This relates back to your conversation you just had in the opening segment, where, it really does boil down to this simple question. How do you reason someone out of a position that they never reasoned themselves into? That's the rub of this. Donald Trump came in and got people who everybody would say, oh, this was a regular Joe Republican and, stood for, strong defense. Russia was the bad guy. You grow the economy, et cetera. And now it's all Trump. And no one has yet really put their finger on, well, how and why did that happen? So when you look at the proposals that Democrats have put out on the table based off of the 2020 election, voters are going, well, I didn't vote for that. I voted to get rid of Trump, but I didn't vote for all this other stuff. So that's the gap right now that you're seeing playing out with Democrats.
So what do you mean? Hold on a second. What do you mean the other stuff? Do you mean that Democrats need to slim down what they're trying to put in this new proposal? I don't follow.
Yeah, exactly. Listen to what the voters are telling you. I mean, they love the infrastructure plan. Build Back Better, not so much. So you keep trying to force a square peg into a round hole politically where the voters just aren't ready to accept that. It doesn't mean they don't want Build Back Better at some point, but other things are more pressing to them. And that's the conversation I think Democrats are not having, which is what is reflected in the polling that you see and why the landscape looks the way it does politically for Republicans, where the country feels, well, if these guys don't get me, you hear it with black voters, you hear it with Hispanic. Why? It doesn't matter the group. If they don't understand why I gave them the power in the first place, then maybe these other guys will get it back and we'll see what happens. And you don't want that attitude to set in. You need to speak to what the voters are telling you was driving them right now. And it's not the things that some of the Democrats out there are pushing.
Matt, you conducted what you've classified as a stress test on American democracy. What does that mean and what'd you learn?
Well, I didn't conduct it. It's what we've been going through, in my view, the last 5 years. I mean, to stress test, as your viewers know and as you know, is what we do as we advance in age. We want to make sure we're healthy, not just in rest, but in vigorous activity. And you think you're fine. You go through a stress test where they put you on an exercise machine or whatever, increases your heart rate. And then sometimes you discover who you thought were healthy, you're actually not healthy, and there's underlying problems, whether it's cardiac or whatever, it's something's going on in your organs.
So you're saying
our country has been through the same thing.
You're saying we don't realize how sick we are?
I think what happened is we thought we were okay as a democracy. And this is pre-Trump. We had our ills and we had our pains and we had our aches and we had certain things, but we thought we were okay. What Donald Trump, his election in the aftermath, and January 6th, and I believe also COVID and how it's been politicized, has shown our democracy is not healthy. It was not healthy when it led to Trump. It has not been healthy through Trump. And my fear is all of the prescriptions are like giving people Tylenol or Advil to relieve their headache or relieve their fever, and we're not dealing with the fundamental problem, and the fundamental problem which led us to here, and which my view is endangers our democracy, is in my view of threefold. First is there's a huge segment of the population that has been lied to and now is propagandized to through both cable networks and radio and all of that. So we have a segment of our population that no longer shares a common set of facts with us. A democracy can't survive with that. The second part of that is that now we have people that are on cable and people that are exacerbating people's fear and hate and grievance. And so what that then leads to is a rise of white nationalism, or a seeding, a fertilizing of what's already existed here. But it also doesn't allow us to get to the common good if we no longer share some values with our neighbor or care about our neighbor or no longer believe that. So we don't have a common set of facts because of the propaganda. The way grievances have been done has also given rise to a lack of the common good, which we arrive at Donald Trump. And to me, Donald Trump isn't the singular cause of this. Donald Trump is a reflection of the sickness of our democracy. And until we, excise the tumors or understand there are some fundamental problems in our democracy that need to be fixed, we're going to keep repeating this and repeating this and repeating this.
So, Michael, tomorrow President Biden will be speaking publicly to the people of Georgia. We'll see those remarks. What does he need to say?
I think he just needs to pull back the veil, the curtain, if you will, on how he sees what they're going through, how he sees their holding on to this sort of Trumpian notion, where they don't seem to be that upset about the Georgia legislature changing the voting laws there. There were no protests in the streets. There weren't people calling for the heads of elected officials who dared to change the voting process in the state to make it harder for seniors and African Americans and others to vote. So I think speaking to that and contextualizing that more broadly is going to be an important first step here. Because right now, the Democrat narrative is all wrapped up in a policy debate that is outside of what people are really concerned about. I mean, the whole thing with Manchin over the summer, if voting is the key central thing, then go and go right to the heart of that. You just can't after 11 months go, oh, well, now voting's important.
Let me add something to what Michael just said. I think Joe Biden needs to start connecting the dots. Instead of a theoretical conversation about democracy, which everybody will say, yeah, I believe in democracy, they have no idea what actually that means in practical. So I think he needs to say what it practically means to have a democracy or not have a democracy, and how that's going to affect your life, and how lack of voting and lack of ability to vote affects your life, affects your ability to get good roads, affects your ability to get health care, affects your ability ultimately to hold anybody accountable, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or independent. Basically, democracy is the only vehicle that allows us to hold leaders accountable. Otherwise, we might as well have just stayed with a monarchy from 250 years ago. This is why, and I think Joe Biden needs to connect the dots of why voting rights and democracy matter to somebody's life, and not some theoretical argument and just get up and say, I love democracy. We need to keep democracy. A third of the country responds to that one way, a third another, and the other third is like, what does that mean?
Maybe Michael, we have to take a break. You two gentlemen are both staying with me. Maybe people didn't protest those restrictive voting laws because they didn't realize the impact it would have on them. And this is the moment to discuss it.